an emerging story in France that goes by the name of Eugenie Bouchard. We mentioned on this show a couple times how close this young woman is to what I believe is superstardom because she's got it all. And her game is catching up to the rest of it right now. She's very marketable, good looking, young, bilingual, and man, can she play. And she showed it today. Here to help us break it down is Damien Cox from Los Angeles, where he was watching on in Paris. Mr. Cox, how are you, sir? Damo. Darn it all. Here's the numbers. We'll try and get Damien on in a split second. Bouchard's the only woman to reach both the semis of the Australian and French Open this year. She's the youngest woman to reach the semis of the first two majors of the year since Maria Sharapova in 2007, and that's only by a month. Sharapova was 20 years, 1 month. Eugenie Bouchard, 20 years, 2 months. And that's who she'll face in the semifinals, a hero of hers too. So she'll be facing a childhood idol as she moves on to the semifinals. I think we've got Damien back on the line, or at least we've established Damien on the line. Damien, you there?
Well, it was when I heard that Sid wasn't on, I thought, I reconsidered it, and then I thought, no, I'll go along with just him. As long as he doesn't yell at me.
But you missed the poop jokes. So, I mean, there's 6 1/2 dozen of the other here, right?
Exactly.
I was talking about Eugenie Bouchard, and I feel like she's on the cusp of superstardom. Do you get that same feeling?
Oh, yeah. I've had that feeling for a while now, probably since Australia for sure. And even longer than that. I mean, she's carried herself like a star in waiting for a considerable period of time, for starters. But also, I mean, she's really developing as a player, and she's come along at a time where the tour is wide open for somebody new to walk right through the door. She doesn't have to deal with the equivalent of a Djokovic and a Nadal and a Federer and all those guys. They just don't exist in the women's game right now. And that really puts her in a position to make enormous inroads, and that's exactly what she's doing.
She could reach a new career high in the rankings following the French Open. What are the steps that she needs to take to get to that level?
To the level of what? To beat Sharapova?
No, I mean to be a superstar, to be among those that we mention every time we mention women's tennis.
You know what? She may already be there.
Yeah.
And for a couple of reasons. She's the best North American player out there right now. Sloane Stephens would be the closest of the United States. So she's already got
Serena
all of
when she wants to play.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that's sort of a different thing.
Right.
But I get your point.
Okay.
But she's got an international audience already. People, and of course, the appeal that she's obviously going to have for commercial purposes, which she really has only just started to exploit, is going to make her a part of the conversation, whether she's successful or not. I mean, we all remember when everybody was talking about Anna Kournikova, and I don't draw a comparison between them, but everybody was talking about her, even though she didn't win big tournaments because of the nature of how women's tennis is set up and the way in which the marketing and the commercialization of the sport is set up. So I'd say she's already there, where she's going to now be part of the conversation at every major event for the next couple of years.
Is it consistency too, Damien? Because I don't know a ton about tennis. I watch it when it comes to Grand Slams, and I try and keep an eye on it. But I noticed that she started the month of May by losing 3 straight matches and then goes on a 10-match winning streak. Is that something that just a young player has to work towards, that kind of consistency, or is she just hitting a time in her life where she's figuring it out?
I think both. She's not very experienced. So you see that experience applied now all the time. Take her opponent today, Carla Suarez Navarro. I saw her play her last year at Wimbledon, and Suarez Navarro beat her not easily, but with relative ease. Bouchard just couldn't figure it out against a slightly more experienced opponent. Go fast forward a year later, you got this match today, and she does figure it out. So I think it's experience for one thing. I'm not sure consistency, because she seems to have already got to the point where she's delivering pretty consistent performances week after week after week, which is why she's able to jump up the rankings so high. But the experience counts, and that'll be her challenge against Sharapova in the semis. just as it was against Lena in Australia. Playing against a more experienced player who's been there before, who's not going to be bothered at all by the attention and everything with it. How will she respond? I don't think Bouchard will be fazed by the big stage, but I think Sharapova's got a bit more, she's got a bit more experience in these big matches.
I think like a lot of Canadians growing up, I always watched for Canadians doing well no matter what sport it was. And as I'm reading through the stuff with Eugenie Bouchard, Hurricane Helen Kellesy's name comes up, Patricia He comes up, Carling Bassett is Eugenie Bouchard already the best player that Canada's ever produced in the women's side?
Well, I mean, right now you'd have to say Carling Bassett-Seguso was probably the best player ever that came through, and she had the rank, but she never, I think the best she ever did was a semi. But look, I think she's on the verge of, and if she can get to the final, you can probably make that argument.
Yeah.
But I think beyond that, you're going to be able to make the argument relatively soon if she continues to have these kind of results that she's got a chance to be maybe the most famous Canadian female athlete ever. And I know that's a jump because we have had a lot of great athletes, female athletes in our country. But the way this whole thing is set up, if she can stay healthy and continue down the same path, she's going to be as big a female star as Canada's ever had in any sport.
Milos goes down, and he goes down to Djokovic, and there's no real shame in that. I think, though, people thought that given the way he was playing that he might have a shot. I guess I'll ask going in, was this the best that you've seen Milos play? And coming out, is it that much of a heartbreak?
I don't know if it's a heartbreak. I mean, I think he played him about as well as he played him 2 weeks ago in Rome.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody can beat this guy. He's doing so I don't think there's any shame and any heartbreak. And I imagine after a while there's some frustration for Raonic that, in the big events he keeps getting to the point where, quarterfinal, and then he runs into Nadal or Federer or Djokovic or Murray or whoever. And that's tough because those guys don't lose to many people. And he's going to have to be, and I know people don't want to hear patience. They're seeing Bouchard get to the semifinal and say, why can't Raonic get to the semifinal? Very different situations, very different depths of field, very different levels of competition. Look at the players that Bouchard's had to play to get to the semis. Now look at the players that Raonic has had to play just to try to get to a semi. So I'm sure there's a frustration, but also having talked to Milos many, many times, he takes the big picture on all this stuff. He really does.
Yeah.
He understands that, what he's up against. And when you look at, I think, in my opinion, the development in his game over the last year, you're seeing a player who's really, once these top guys maybe fade a little bit, that'll be his chance to jump in and win one of these big tournaments.
It's interesting, and I'm sure you know it, Damien Cox joining us from Los Angeles. There's a fear among Canadian fans that he's like, this is the peak and he hasn't been able to take that next step and he never will be able to take that next step. But you're seeing something in the last year that would suggest something otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, look, tennis is not the most popular sport in Canada,
right.
So I understand that people may not understand A, what it takes to win, and B, how players develop. And, they look and they see him at 23 saying, well, Sidney Crosby's already got a Stanley Cup and a gold medal by that age. Why doesn't he do it? The reality is, and particularly given the kind of player he is, he's really had to work on parts of his game. He's got the big serve. Everybody knows that. He's developing the big forehand. He's coming into the net more. His movement is better. It's still not the best on tour or great, but for a big man, it's pretty damn good. And so I think the big piece that's still missing, you saw it again today, is his return game. He has difficulty putting pressure on the very best guys in the world on his return game. But again, and I said this on Twitter, who does break Novak Djokovic? So if he continues to improve that part of his game and add it to playing at the net more, being more consistent, his groundies are better than they were. He's continuing to develop pretty much every part of his game.
Carling Bassett, a semifinal at the U.S. Open. Very good, Damien Cox.
There you go.
Quarterfinal at the Australian and 2 French Open quarterfinals.
See, I've reached my maximum, 1 correct fact per day.
I know you're in L.A. for the Kings and Hawks. Yeah. Anything going on today that we need to know about?
Just media day. They're starting. Of course, Daniel Carcillo will be available for Game 4, so that's an earth-shaking development. But no, I mean, this is sort of a how do you do day, and a million interviews and all that sort of stuff, and sort of setting the stage for. I think the question is pretty simple: can the Rangers make this a series?
Yeah,
and we're gonna find out whether they've got what it takes to take on the Kings. But the NHL couldn't ask for two bigger markets, could they?
no, and you can just see the synergy too with Hollywood and New York, and I'll never forget that the cover of Sports Illustrated. There was no coincidence that it was New York that won the Stanley Cup when it said NHL is hot, NBA is not. And having these two markets gives them that kind of platform.
Well, and then they dropped the ball, right?
Yeah.
And they allowed the game to kind of deteriorate. And if there's really good news about the game, is the Kings have got here and they're winning by offense.
Yeah.
This is as offensive a team they've had since Gretzky was here. So to me, that's great positive news because this game needs more offense.
Yeah. And Jeff Merrick and I had a long kind of conversation about the numbers and why they were. I mean, in the conference finals, it was the highest numbers, I think, since goal numbers since 1991. And you wonder what it is, because some of those goals in at least Game 7 were just, lucky bounces. But the skill is shining through. And even a guy like Darryl Sutter is going, all right, kids, go play some hockey. Like, this isn't, let's wait for Jerome McGinley to score a power play goal. This is, these guys can score at every level on that team.
Well, it struck me, I was at Game 7 in Chicago the other night, and it really struck me that, and you're right, I mean, some of them were bouncers going in, but there were also a lot of great chances, and it really seemed to me this was what they envisioned when they changed the game after the lockout in 2004 or 4 or 5. This is what they envisioned, was a faster game with more scoring. But the coaches, unfortunately, figured it out. But this seems to have returned a little bit now. Will this final be that kind of hockey? We'll see. I think the Rangers, to win, probably can't play that run and gun game. But we didn't think the Kings could, and they managed to do it. So, like I said, to my taste, to my liking, that's the kind of style I'd like to see more of. Whether they can actually maintain it, we'll see.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And all I can think in the back of my head is, much to the dismay of the Vancouver Canucks, who come out and say the game has changed, and then they have to go. I mean, this is unbelievable. It's like they're chasing their own tail out there. I feel so bad for them. Anyways, I love the diversity. I love the flip from the tennis to hockey, and appreciate it, Damo.
I was going to say, what sports next? What are we doing now? CFL?
Yeah, want to do some football?
Sure, anytime.
We'll let the CFL dogs rest for a little while until they're on strike, and we can figure that out.
Sounds good.
All right, buddy. Thanks. There is Damien Cox, and we didn't yell at each other. As a party, I know you're on the phone. Oh, you hung up on him.